In a city built on calm waters, darkness moved faster than mercy, turning peace into a stage for violence and fate. A friend gunned down on his own porch after laughter faded. A police officer's final pursuit ends beneath the streetlights of Hudson Avenue. An innocent neighbor consumed by fire meant for another. And a mother's cry drowned in the chaos of a courtroom brawl. Now, many years later, each verdict, carved into Rochester's memory, stands as both punishment and reminder that justice may heal wounds, but it never erases scars. And this is Every Killer Who Shook Rochester, New York full list and shocking true crime case. Welcome back to Crime Ledger USA, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1, Lakwan Hannah. Under the dim streetlights of Lyle Avenue, a returning car ended a fragile peace. Within moments, gunfire shattered the night. Lakwan Hannah, a 29-year-old man from Rochester, New York, was already on probation for a prior weapon charge when he turned a personal dispute into a deadly attack. The crime occurred in the early morning of the 4th of May 2024, outside a small home where friends had gathered. Hours earlier, Hannah had argued with people at the same location, including 29-year-old Jared Perry, a friend he had known for years. After leaving the house, he made a deliberate choice to return, armed and intent on confrontation. Around 1:35 a.m., Hannah arrived back at the residence. Several people were sitting on the porch, unaware of what was about to happen. He stepped out of his car, raised his weapon, and opened fire at close range. Bullets tore through the group, killing 31-year-old Marquise Chambers and wounding 2 women in their 20s. Witnesses later recalled a scene of confusion as screams filled the air, and those still alive scrambled for cover. Hannah then entered the house, where children were present, and pursued Jared Perry down a hallway before fatally shooting him. The once ordinary home became a place of terror, a reminder of how quickly anger can escalate into irreversible tragedy. When the first gunshots echoed through the neighborhood, ShotSpotter's sensors alerted the Rochester Police Department. Officers arrived within minutes to find 2 victims dead, 2 injured, and evidence of forced entry. Investigators from the Major Crimes Unit began piecing together the timeline, gathering shell casings, blood samples, and witness statements. Surveillance footage and forensic data soon identified Hannah as the prime suspect. Within days, detectives confirmed that he had fled New York State, prompting an interstate manhunt. For months, authorities traced his movements through multiple jurisdictions until, in January 2025, Hannah was found in Euless, Texas. Arrested on unrelated drug charges, he presented false identification, but fingerprint checks exposed his identity and linked him to the Rochester killings. The Rochester Police Department and the Monroe County District Attorney's Office coordinated with Texas authorities to extradite him back to New York. By late 2025, confronted with substantial evidence, Hannah pleaded guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder, admitting responsibility for the quadruple shooting. In January 2026, New York State Supreme Court Justice Alex Renzi sentenced him to 34 years to life in prison. Prosecutors emphasized that Hannah committed the murders while on active probation, highlighting his conscious disregard for the law. The courtroom was somber, the verdict marking closure for a community still haunted by the violence of that night. This case stands as a reminder that impulsive anger can destroy lives in seconds, that probation is a test of reform requiring restraint, and that multi-agency cooperation remains essential in delivering justice. Each step of the investigation reflected determination over vengeance and precision over panic. Today, Lakwan Hannah is serving his 34 years to life sentence within the New York State Department of Corrections. Before we continue, if this case shakes you, press hype, stand with us, break silence, and let justice roar louder than the voices once erased. Number 2. Thomas Johnson III. Under the orange glow of Hudson Avenue's streetlights, a single gunshot ended decades of calm in Rochester's police history. Thomas Johnson III, a 38-year-old parolee recently released from prison, became the center of one of New York's most shocking police murder cases. On the 3rd of September 2014, he fatally shot Officer Darrell Pearson, the first Rochester police officer killed in the line of duty since 1959. Johnson had been out of prison for only 2 weeks after serving time for attempted robbery. A passenger in a vehicle stopped by police that night. He fled on foot, setting off a deadly chase that would claim a life and alter the community's sense of safety. Just after 9:20 p.m., tactical officers stopped a car driven by Anson Clark. Johnson, wanted for a parole violation, bolted from the passenger seat. Officers Darrell Pearson and Michael D. Paula joined the pursuit, chasing Johnson through city streets lined with businesses and apartment buildings. Within minutes, the chase moved south on Hudson Avenue. As Pearson closed in, Johnson drew a .25 caliber Raven pistol with a defaced serial number. When the two collided, Johnson turned and fired once at muzzle-to-flesh range. The bullet entered under Pearson's chin, severing an artery and causing rapid blood loss. Officer DePaola returned fire, wounding Johnson and ending the confrontation. Pearson was rushed to Rochester General Hospital, where he was pronounced dead less than 90 minutes later. A bystander, 24-year-old Jamal Bowler, was also struck by a stray bullet and survived. Investigators immediately secured the scene and began reconstructing the sequence of events. Over the following weeks, Rochester Police and the Monroe County District Attorney's Office worked closely with federal agencies to analyze footage from 5 nearby security cameras, creating a synchronized timeline of the chase. Forensic specialists examined the handgun, confirming the close-range discharge that matched the fatal wound. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives assisted in attempting to recover the gun's serial number. Dozens of witnesses, including officers and civilians, gave statements under oath. The investigation painted a clear picture of deliberate violence. Johnson had fled knowing he was wanted and armed, vowing not to return to prison alive. The trial began in early 2015 at the New York State Supreme Court. Over 3 days, the jury deliberated 16 hours before reaching a unanimous verdict. Johnson was found guilty of aggravated murder of a police officer, attempted aggravated murder of Officer DePaola, second-degree assault, and multiple weapons charges. In July 2015, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, the mandatory penalty under New York law. This case reinforces that parole is a privilege built on trust, that every illegal weapon is a potential tragedy waiting to unfold, and that law enforcement investigations, though methodical and long, remain the backbone of justice. Each decision that night, flight, pursuit, and gunfire, demonstrated how chaos can erupt from a single refusal to surrender. Today, Thomas Johnson III is serving life without parole in the New York State Department of Corrections. Number 3. Taquida Hendrix. Flames rose through the quiet night on Portland Avenue, transforming a neighborhood's silence into screams and sirens within minutes. Taquida Hendrix, 31 at the time, arrived at the Rochester duplex with her sister, Tia Kayla, and a man named Roy Chambers. Hours earlier, the Hendrix sisters had learned of an alleged assault on their father and believed someone involved lived at that address. But they were wrong. Around 2 a.m. On the 28th of July, 2024, their vehicle stopped in front of a home that belonged to a completely unrelated family. Inside, a boy named Malachi Stovall slept on the second floor, unaware that vengeance meant for someone else was about to consume his world. Hendrix stepped out holding a canister of gasoline, dousing the porch and doorway while her sister and Chambers stood watch. She struck a lighter and the flame instantly leapt across the wood, climbing the walls and windows in seconds. The fire spread with violent speed, blocking escape routes as thick black smoke filled the air. Upstairs, Malachi woke to the heat and chaos. Firefighters later said he had been trapped for 21 minutes before being pulled from the burning structure, his small body covered in burns over 75% of its surface. He never regained consciousness and died at a local hospital on July 31. Rochester fire and police investigators treated the scene as suspicious from the beginning. Traces of accelerant were found at the base of the porch steps, and witnesses reported seeing a dark vehicle leaving the area moments before the explosion of flames. Surveillance cameras from nearby businesses captured the car driving away. Within days, detectives identified the Hendrix sisters and Chambers through tips and digital evidence. In early August, all 3 were taken into custody without reported resistance. The Major Crimes Unit led the investigation, relying heavily on forensic analysis and witness cooperation. During interrogation, both Tia Kayla Hendrix and Roy Chambers admitted their involvement and agreed to testify against Taquida in exchange for plea deals. Their statements, combined with gasoline residue found on Taquida's clothing and cell phone location data placing her at the scene, solidified the case. The trial took place in Monroe County Court in 2025. Prosecutors described the act as deliberate retaliation carried out with reckless disregard for innocent life. After a short deliberation of only 30 minutes, the jury returned a guilty verdict for second-degree murder, first-degree arson, and second-degree assault. In January 2026, Justice Stephen Miller sentenced Hendrix to concurrent terms of 25 years to life, citing her lack of remorse and the crime's extraordinary cruelty. This tragedy underscores 3 enduring truths. Retaliation blinds judgment faster than anger can fade. Deliberate violence leaves no room for redemption when innocent lives are lost. And forensic evidence, combined with cooperation among investigators, remains the cornerstone of modern criminal justice. Each detail gathered from the charred remains served as a testament to how truth survives even through devastation. Today, Taquida Hendrix is serving her life sentence within the New York State Department of Corrections. Number 4. Brandon Washington. On a summer night in Rochester, New York, a chain of gunfire and fear traced back to one man, the leader of a sprawling drug empire that thrived on violence. Brandon Washington, known on the streets as B-Mac, was a 40-year-old ringleader of a massive marijuana trafficking network that dominated several Rochester neighborhoods. From 2021 through mid-2022, his organization operated multiple drug houses and generated thousands of dollars each night. But money wasn't his only weapon, violence was. As rival groups challenged his control, Washington sought to protect his territory through intimidation, orchestrating a series of retaliatory attacks that would leave officers and civilians dead. The summer of 2022 marked the turning point. Washington's feud with a competing gang, led by Rasheem Coop Sullivan, erupted into an all-out turf war. When two rival members, Nigel Rand and Ricky Collins, were shot and killed on July 20, police began investigating the murders, unaware they were about to become targets themselves. 2 days later, on the 21st of July 2022, Rochester police officers Anthony Mazurkiewicz and Sino Seng conducted surveillance on Bauman Street in connection with those killings. Hiding nearby, an enforcer Washington had brought from Boston, Kelvin Vickers, crept toward their unmarked van and unleashed a burst of bullets through the windows. Officer Mazurkiewicz was struck and killed instantly. Officer Seng was severely wounded but survived. The ambush sent shockwaves through the department and the city. In the days that followed, law enforcement launched a sweeping investigation known as Operation Blue Justice. It was led by the Rochester Police Department and supported by the ATF, DEA, and FBI. Detectives executed dozens of search warrants across Washington's network, drug houses on Street Paul, Laser, and 6th Streets, and seized weapons, cash, and drugs. Ballistics matched several seized firearms to shootings linked to Washington's crew. Digital evidence and intercepted communications revealed how he financed and directed violence to protect his drug trade. Federal agents traced travel and payment records showing Washington had personally arranged for Vickers' arrival from Boston, reinforcing prosecutors' claim of premeditation. By late 2023, after months of surveillance, Washington was charged as the organizer behind the narcotics conspiracy and the violence it spawned. In August 2025, Washington pleaded guilty in federal court to conspiracy to distribute over 100 kilograms of marijuana and possession of firearms in furtherance of a drug trafficking crime. In December 2025, Judge Frank P. Garassi Jr. of the U.S. District Court sentenced him to 262 months, nearly 22 years, in federal prison. Prosecutors described the case as a victory for justice, and police officials emphasized that Washington's network had been dismantled. This case reminds us that organized drug violence destroys more than its rivals. It shatters communities, corrodes public trust, and takes innocent lives. It proves that large-scale investigations, grounded in coordination and persistence, can pierce even the most fortified criminal networks. And it stands as a testament that no empire built on fear survives justice. Today, Brandon Washington is serving his federal sentence in the custody of the U.S. Department of Corrections. Number 5. Dimitri Cash and Joenathan Cash. The sound of breaking glass shattered the calm of a suburban home in Greece, New York, marking the start of one of the most elaborate kidnapping cases in the state's history. Dimitri Cash Sr., consumed by rage over a family court decision that stripped him of custody, became the mastermind of a plot that mixed obsession with revenge. On the 18th of January 2021, he orchestrated the abduction of his two young children, Dimitri Jr. and Shakiria, from their foster home. Acting under his direction, his cousin Joenathan Cash and Joenathan's girlfriend, Kimara Pluvios, arrived in disguises. At approximately 8:40 p.m., they smashed a window, stormed inside, and confronted the foster mother, who was holding two other children. In a chilling display of control, they bound her and the children with duct tape, sealed her mouth, and took Dimitri's biological children from their beds. Moments later, they stole her minivan, initiating a multi-state manhunt that would grip national headlines under an Amber Alert. As investigators swarmed the neighborhood, it became clear this was not a random crime but a calculated operation. The Greece Police Department, with assistance from state police, the FBI, and U.S. Marshals, traced the suspects using GPS data from the stolen van. The kidnappers switched vehicles at a rental lot and drove the children to Alabama. Forensic teams analyzed fingerprints, digital communications, and surveillance footage, uncovering evidence that linked the abduction to Dimitri. Detectives learned the kidnapping was only part of a larger pattern of violence. In the months before, Dimitri had conducted background searches on family court judge Stacy Romeo, the very judge who had ruled against him, and enlisted Joenathan to follow her movements. He had plotted to disguise himself as a delivery worker to approach her home and, according to court records, to use kerosene in a planned murder attempt. The plot was discovered through witness testimony and digital evidence, revealing a dangerous obsession that extended far beyond his custody battle. The children were found in Alabama 2 days later, unharmed but traumatized. Within weeks, all 3 suspects were in custody. In 2022, a Monroe County jury convicted Dimitri and Joenathan Cash on multiple counts of kidnapping, burglary, robbery, and endangering a child. Later, in December 2022, Dimitri was separately convicted for conspiring to murder Judge Romeo. During the proceedings, he represented himself, frequently interrupting the court with incoherent arguments. By February 2023, Justice Stephen Miller handed down one of the harshest sentences in county history, 115 years to life for Dimitri, plus an additional term for the murder plot. His cousin received 75 years. The Cash case stands as a reminder that custody battles can turn catastrophic when anger outweighs reason, that digital forensics and interagency coordination are crucial in solving modern crimes, and that the justice system's reach extends across state lines to protect the innocent. These lessons, drawn from a crime built on vengeance, emphasize how obsession can destroy generations. Today, Dimitri Cash is serving a life sentence within the New York State Department of Corrections. Number 6. Black Jewelz. The streets of downtown Rochester turned violent on an autumn evening in 2019, when a man with a knife cut through the night, leaving one dead and another wounded. Black Jewelz, a 34-year-old parolee with 6 prior felony convictions, had spent most of his adult life cycling between prison and probation. Released just a year earlier, he had recently been placed in a drug and mental health diversion program designed to rehabilitate offenders. But on the 11th of October 2019, that second chance collapsed into chaos. Around 7:30 p.m., witnesses reported a disturbance at the RTS Transit Center. Security guards confronted Jewelz after he began yelling and behaving erratically before storming off into the city's streets. Minutes later, the violence began. On Bragdon Place, near the Genesee River, Jewelz encountered 24-year-old David Oquendo. Without warning, he lunged forward, stabbing the young man in the upper torso and abdomen. Oquendo stumbled and collapsed as bystanders called for help. Jewelz fled, crossing to nearby street Paul Street, where he encountered 28-year-old Neville Brown and stabbed him as well. Both attacks happened within minutes, turning the area into an active crime scene. Emergency crews rushed Oquendo to Strong Memorial Hospital, where he died from his injuries later that night. Brown survived after emergency surgery. Police quickly locked down sections of the downtown district. Detectives from the Rochester Police Department's Major Crimes Unit canvassed both crime scenes, gathering surveillance footage, interviewing witnesses, and recovering a blood-stained knife found near the riverbank. Investigators pieced together a timeline showing that the 2 attacks were connected and that the same man, known to locals as Black Jewelz, had been seen near the transit center minutes before the first stabbing. Officers reviewed security footage from nearby businesses and transit cameras, which captured his movements as he fled the scene. Within days, police tracked him down and arrested him without reported resistance. As the investigation unfolded, prosecutors highlighted Jewelz' lengthy criminal record and his placement in a rehabilitation program just months before the killings. They argued that his release from state custody, despite his violent history, exposed flaws in the system meant to protect the public. The case drew further attention when prosecutors revealed that Jewelz had previously threatened others with knives and violated protective orders but had still been granted supervised treatment instead of incarceration. In 2022, after a lengthy legal process, Jewelz was convicted of second-degree murder, attempted murder, and assault. The judge sentenced him to 52 years to life in prison. The courtroom fell silent as the sentence was read, marking the end of a case that symbolized the collision between rehabilitation and public safety. This tragedy reinforces 3 harsh lessons. Untreated mental instability and leniency for repeat offenders can yield devastating results. Rapid, coordinated police work remains vital in capturing violent fugitives and victims of random violence, reminds society that prevention begins with accountability. Today, Black Jewelz is serving his 52 years to life sentence within the New York State Department of Corrections. Number 7. Jermaine Williams. The music had ended hours earlier, But the echoes of chaos were just beginning on Rochester's Rialto Street that night. Jermaine Williams, a 23-year-old man from Rochester, became the prime suspect in a deadly shooting that claimed 2 lives and wounded another in the early morning of the 6th of May 2024. Prosecutors allege that Williams, after an altercation during a Sexy Red concert at the Blue Cross Arena, drove to a residential neighborhood and opened fire into a crowd of people gathered on a porch. The attack left 43-year-old Timothy Cheely and 46-year-old Shatina Jones dead, both described as completely innocent bystanders. A third victim, an unidentified man, survived with gunshot injuries. According to investigators, the violence stemmed from a confrontation inside the concert venue the night before. Surveillance footage captured heated exchanges near the arena's exit, and witnesses later reported that Williams had argued with several attendees before leaving abruptly. Hours later, around 1 a.m., a dark-colored vehicle was seen driving down Rialto Street near Hollenbeck. Moments after, more than a dozen shots erupted into the night, striking the victims as they sat and talked outside the house. The neighborhood awoke to panic as calls flooded 911, reporting rapid gunfire. Officers arriving at the scene found shell casings scattered across the porch, with Cheely and Jones fatally wounded before they could be rushed to the hospital. The Rochester Police Department's Major Crimes Unit led the investigation, quickly determining that the shooting was connected to the earlier concert dispute. Detectives canvassed the area for video evidence, collecting surveillance clips and interviewing dozens of witnesses. Ballistic analysis confirmed that the same weapon fired at least 12 rounds in rapid succession. As the investigation expanded, the U.S. Marshals Violent Felony Fugitive Task Force joined local officers to track Williams, who had fled the city. Using cell phone data and surveillance networks, authorities traced him to Niagara Falls. On the 31st of May 2024, Williams was taken into custody without resistance. Officials described the arrest as swift and precise, the result of coordinated interagency work. Williams appeared in Rochester City Court on June 1 for arraignment, but the hearing descended into chaos. A massive fight broke out between his family and the victim's relatives, prompting deputies to use pepper spray to restore order. The altercation made national headlines, and though the media was restricted from filming the audience, the story spread rapidly on social platforms. Within weeks, a Monroe County grand jury indicted Williams on 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. He pleaded not guilty and remains held without bail at the Monroe County Jail. This case underscores several lessons. A single moment of retaliation can destroy multiple lives. The speed and precision of modern investigation remain vital in violent crime cases, and unchecked anger at public gatherings can rapidly escalate into tragedy. Jermaine Williams now awaits trial inside the Monroe County Jail, facing charges that could imprison him for life. Number 8. Terrence Lewis. In Rochester, New York, a legal misstep unraveled years of courtroom work, releasing a man once convicted of murder back into society. Terrence Lewis, 31, became the focus of public outrage after his 2018 murder conviction was vacated in February 2024. He had been found guilty of second-degree murder for acting as the driver in a 2015 drive-by shooting that killed 29-year-old Johnny Washington, a father of 3. The case, originally described as senseless and deliberate, was later overturned not because of new evidence, but due to a technical violation of the Interstate Agreement on Detainers, known as the IAD law, a rarely discussed but powerful federal statute that regulates how inmates are transferred between jurisdictions. The murder unfolded on the 26th of May 2015, around 10:15 a.m., at the intersection of 6th and Bay Streets in Rochester. Witnesses described a sudden burst of gunfire from a passing vehicle, striking Washington multiple times in the torso before the car sped away. The victim collapsed on the sidewalk and was pronounced dead minutes later. Detectives from the Rochester Police Department launched an investigation, identifying Lewis as the suspected driver of the vehicle involved in the shooting. Despite being incarcerated on unrelated federal drug charges, he was indicted in November 2017. The timeline of his prosecution became the foundation for the legal error that would later set him free. In January 2018, Lewis was transferred from a federal prison in Pennsylvania to Monroe County Jail for arraignment on the murder charge. Under the IAD law, once a prisoner is transferred for prosecution, the receiving jurisdiction must complete the trial before returning the prisoner to the original facility. However, in May 2018, Monroe County officials returned Lewis to federal custody while his murder case was still pending. That single administrative mistake violated the IAD's anti-shuttling rule. He was brought back to Rochester in July for trial, convicted by a jury in October, and sentenced to 22 years to life that December. For years, Lewis served his sentence without incident, beginning his state time after completing the federal term in 2020. But defense lawyers later filed motions arguing that his transfer violated federal law. In early 2024, New York Supreme Court Justice Stephen Miller agreed, vacating the conviction and dismissing the indictment with prejudice, meaning Lewis could never be tried again for Washington's murder. The decision stunned the community and law enforcement. Monroe County Sheriff Todd Baxter publicly apologized to the victim's family, calling it a travesty of justice while pledging new oversight protocols and state-level appeals to change how the IAD law is applied. Though prosecutors emphasized that the reversal did not question Lewis's guilt, it showcased how one clerical error could dismantle an entire homicide case. From this case, 3 lessons emerge. The smallest procedural oversight can undo years of justice. Laws must evolve to balance fairness with accountability, and human error within legal systems can carry irreversible consequences. Today, Terrence Lewis walks free, released from 5 Points Correctional Facility after his conviction was vacated in February 2024. Every city hides stories it wishes the world would forget, but in Rochester, the echoes of its crimes never truly fade. From drive-by shootings to calculated revenge, from courtroom chaos to cold-blooded betrayal, each case reveals how thin the line is between order and chaos. These are not just crimes, they're snapshots of fear, power, and consequence that shaped an entire city's soul. If you believe every story of justice deserves to be told, make sure you subscribe to Crime Ledger USA and hit the notification bell so you'll be the first to uncover the next chilling chapter in America's true crime history.